Hello everybody and welcome to the Radiator Arms, everybody's fourth favourite car-themed pub-esque podcast. Sponsored this week by Armadillo.
Crunchy on the outside, smooth on the inside.
This reference has been lost on me today.
You see, sometimes the age difference between all of us doesn't feel like anything. But then on occasion, even just a year or two makes all the difference.
That one was definitely just on the threshold.
Yeah.
Dime bar? No?
Oh, was that an advert? Was that
Yes, with Harry Enfield.
Oh, I think
And,
I do remember it.
he would go around asking people if they like the dime bar because it's
Smooth on the inside, crunchy on the outside.
And then this other guy was like, Armadillo!
Oh, dear.
Today's topic, we're getting about as political as I'm ever going to dare, because we are going to be pretending that due to an administrative error, which I think any government is capable of, we're going to pretend that the three of us have been given near unlimited power.
Unlimited power!
To reshape transport policy in Great Britain as we see fit. Not necessarily with unlimited budget, for if you do have a suggestion, you are going to have to tell me how we're going to pay for it, but with some degree of creativity and, I think, authoritarianism. But before that, gentlemen, I teased you this morning and told you that last night I had a brush with the law.
You did.
Would you like to hear more about it?
Did you fight the law and the law won, or was it, one of those?
No. It almost felt like, in the words of Sylvester Stallone, I am the law. I had been into London to watch a marathon screening of the Lord of the Rings trilogy at one of my favourite places in the world, the Prince Charles Cinema. And I had begun the long and tedious journey home, and I was joining the motorway when I saw to my right a vehicle whose description I shall not mention in case the person listens to this and then decides to hunt me down like a dog, weaving somewhat uncontrollably, which at first I thought looked like somebody that was trying to either text on their phone or maybe sort out the last bit of the sat-nav postcode they hadn't quite entered correctly. But then they continued weaving and moving from one side of the lane to the other, and then drifting into the lane next to them as well, with somewhat inconsistent speed, no indication or anything like that, and this carried on for about a mile. At which point I came to a very simple conclusion. This person is either having some description of medical emergency, or far more likely, they're pissed. Now, I think most of us have some kind of story about somebody drunk behind the wheel. And if we're lucky, it ends relatively well for all involved. But I do know quite a few people that have stories that sadly don't end well. And I have personally absolutely no tolerance for anybody getting behind the wheel of a vehicle who is quite clearly incapable of driving. Now, it's one thing if you've had a half of lager top, but maybe you've got no tolerance, so maybe on the side of the road you breathe over, but actually your driving was fine. It's quite another if very clearly you can't keep the damn thing in your lane. So, I called 999. Said I appear to be following what to me very much looks like a drunk driver. And they said, oh, okay, can you give us a description of the car, license plate, which I could. And it took me a little while to work it out because one of the lights for the number plate had actually fallen out. So it was obscuring part of the plate. And they said, okay, yeah, we'll get somebody on this. But I said, okay, are you going to send somebody out to check them? They said, well, yeah, we will. They said, but we will only do this if somebody has actually got eyes on the vehicle. They were then coming off the motorway at a junction I hadn't intended to leave. So I figured, okay, let's, for as much as I can safely, follow them. Anyway, they came off the motorway, came to what is kind of a junction, but is more just two roads merging, and they just stopped with no traffic anywhere for about a minute. No markings on the road, no traffic lights, anything, just stopped. So had somebody been coming off the motorway at speed, it might have, gone quite bad. I then carried on following them, talking to the lady on the phone and saying where it was that we were. And they took a bend, and honestly, I'm surprised they didn't just drive into some railings because their road positioning was all over the shop. It looks to me like they clipped at least one curb. it was like watching a bowling ball when someone's got the bumpers up. It was that bad, and within this whole thing took less than, I would say, about 5 minutes. And the police turned up. Guy was still in the car, got him, tested him. Yeah, more than double the limit.
Wow. What happened just before that? Did he actually? You said he stopped. Then he went going again.
He went and parked up somewhere.
Oh, right.
So whether he was home or picking somebody up or what, I don't know. Because what happened was he went into a dead end, and the lady on the phone told me where he's going in is a dead end now. So I thought, okay, well, I don't want to make anything worse, because if somebody is actually either, because you assume drunk, but it could be something totally different. I have no interest in making the situation worse or putting myself in harm's way. But also because it's a dead end, I can stop anywhere, because if they leave, I'll see them. But the police were there like 30 seconds later. And then, I spoke to another officer who told me, by the way, thank you very much. The guy has been arrested for drink driving. So you've potentially done a very, very good thing. Well, you have done a very, very good thing here, but you could have, saved somebody from harm. Actually, he said you might have saved someone's life. So that's going on the CV. What I also did say to them, because they then took my statement and everything, and I said, look, I'm just curious here. Like, when I assume by the way that he was driving, he kind of melted the breathalyzer that he blew into, and they were like, yeah, I think he's just about double the limit. And I said to the guy, well, a man clearly cannot handle his drink, because that is the shittest driving I have ever seen in my life. And he laughed and said, can we put that in the report? I was like, yeah, of course you can. He said, no word of a lie. He said, actually, the judges really like it if you just say it like it is and you just put in a really blunt description, because it just shows your assessment of it. And I was like, yeah, I legitimately thought you were going to tell me that, you opened the door and basically, your eyes started watering because the guy was so gone, or he was in the middle of having some sort of diabetic episode or something like that, or the place was like a Colombian snow globe in there, But yeah, because obviously I'm teetotal, so I don't understand these things. But what's the limit? 2 and a bit pints?
No, it's way less than that. I think it's like.
Yeah, I know it depends on the person and everything else,
and
but
the pints, because different levels of alcohol in the beer. So a lot of people just say, 2 pints and you're safe, but it also depends on the period of time. Yeah. So the safest option is just don't drink and drive.
Yeah.
And if people say, you can get away with 2 pints, then just have one.
Well, I've got a story about that, actually. The only time I've ever driven after having a drink was actually when I was a learner in my old VW van. Mm-hmm. My dad and I, we were going, we did a gig together. We came back. I had 1 pint at the gig an hour before we left. And I remember on the way back, it was only a half an hour drive. I was like, I can notice a difference in the way I feel behind the wheel. It is so weird. I pulled over after less than 5 minutes, said, you've got to drive. You've got to take over. And that experience really shook me up to the point that I have never, ever mixed alcohol in driving. I never have. I don't even drink now. In fact, actually, yesterday was my 4-year anniversary of completely stopping drinking.
Hey!
Congratulations.
And it wasn't even because I had a problem. It's just, I just got sick of it. I got sick of feeling unwell. I got sick of, not being able to have a drink and then not being able to drive, not being able to go somewhere. And then just, the recovery time when you get into your 30s isn't the same. And I know it's weird. I'm like that. Sometimes I make decisions, go, right, I'm not doing that again. I did the same thing with smoking when I was about 24. I'd been doing it for about 10 years, and literally I went, I'm done, and stopped. And just did it. But yeah.
Well, just be careful with that, because now you have got the Mercedes. Cigars might suddenly become a lot more attractive than they ever used to be.
Yes. I also think divorce would be a lot more likely to happen. My wife said to me, if you were ever a vapor or a smoker, we never would have got together. If you ever took that up, we'd be done. Which is one of the reasons I never actually took up vaping, actually, because there was a while I met my wife literally just after I'd given up smoking, and there was a while where I was like, I could really go back to this, but I was like, no, she kept me sober in the lungs department.
Well done, Mrs. Will.
She's a good old girl.
Aren't we lucky she doesn't listen to this podcast?
She's given, as I've said before, she's given up listening to the podcast because she gets enough of it at home.
Yeah, well, I've never had any complaints, so
exactly. Oh dear. But yeah, that was one of the reasons for me that I've always had a zero tolerance to drink driving personally, and I've never gotten cars with people that drink. I've known members of extended family who have lost their license for moving their car across a car park.
Yes,
drunk.
Yes.
Not even taken it out on the road, but they've moved it across the car park.
Yes, a lot of people are not aware that you can be done for being potentially in the passenger seat of your own car.
Yeah.
If you're in charge of the vehicle.
Yeah. If you have the keys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sleeping in your car after a heavy session of drinking
is how a lot of people get done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is a thing where if the keys are left with
someone else,
and you don't have access to the keys, I think there is a thing where you might not be, but I think there have been cases.
It is possible, because I have known people who have legitimately, basically, either they're staying away from home or whatever, and they've gone to sleep in the back of their own van type thing. I have known people that have been done when they probably shouldn't have been, and you can then, obviously, you go to court and you have to explain everything, but you're like, it would be a lot easier, wouldn't it, if you just didn't have to go to court? Like, just, what's the advert? Just get yourself a travel lodge.
Yeah.
How
does that work with camper vans? Because it's clearly that it's as a vehicle that is designed for you to sleep in RVs. You've had a drink, but you're in the bed all the way in the back.
It would depend, I suppose, if you're at Pontins or on the side of the A12.
Yeah, I suppose that's it, isn't it? If you're on private property, apparently I think it's illegal to drink on private property as well and be in a car or something like that.
So I think it's not about whether it's private property or not, it's whether it's publicly accessible, is my understanding. Yeah. So, if you go into a car park that doesn't have any kind of prevention of entry, like no barrier, nothing like that, the rules of the road essentially apply in that car park.
Yeah.
That's the way it essentially works. If it's a private road, same thing. If it's a road with no barrier, nothing preventing the public from entering that private road, all the rules of the road apply on that private road.
Interesting.
But once it's gated, blocked off, and the gate stays closed, it's like even if you leave the gate open, at that point, the rules of the public road apply. Once the gate's closed on a private road, then it's your road, you do what you want with it.
Think almost, would you let a child drive in that scenario? Basically, yeah. If it's a private bit of forest or track or whatever that you have complete control over, yeah, it's a bit of private land. You can do what you want.
Yes. Would you let a 13-year-old Will in his father's Mercedes drive on that?
yeah. That's basically the barometer.
There's a distinction between, like a weird distinction between private land and a public place.
Yeah.
Right? So you can, a cinema that anyone can walk into, that foyer area is a public place, but it's still private land.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with a private road. If the gates are always open, it's a public place.
It's how people get done for doing kind of donuts and car parks and things like that, and skids and stuff there, because it's open to the public and people could go in, I suppose, and get injured.
That's exactly it.
And this sort of stuff was always very important to me when I was doing filming, because, there is a very large difference between a public space and a publicly accessible private space, which sometimes may not be particularly obvious, but there are important legal distinctions. Anyhow, this is actually one of the first things that I would change in JayEmm's Britain, because as a non-drinker, I think that the law is a little bit too confusing and too open to interpretation. So I think it would actually make an awful lot more sense to just reduce the limit to nearly zero, or whatever it is, basically what they have in Scotland. Because that's one thing I personally have always felt was slightly weird and unfair, is that you could go to a pub in, say, Newcastle, have yourself a beverage of your choosing, be stopped on the side of the road by an officer of the law, be breathalyzed, be told you're safe, you're fine, go on your merry way, drive another 100 miles north, get stopped again by a member of that constabulary, breathalyzed, you're over the limit now. It's the same.
Know that.
Yeah, no, it's different in Scotland.
Ah, interesting.
The rule is different in Scotland, which to me, it just seems wrong that there is variability in that. And also, the fact you've just said that you weren't aware proves the issue, because you might, in totally good faith, go and have an beer and think, well, I know that I'm fine to drive. And a police officer could tell you you're fine to drive. But yeah, and in JayEmm's Britain, I would also make it mandatory that any sort of establishment serving alcoholic beverages should be stocked with a reasonable supply of breathalyzers available at no cost.
Ah, that would be a good idea. I like that one. That one gets my vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because so many people, sorry, Will, so many people I know that have also been done, not that night, but the morning before. Yes. They got the taxi home, but they had maybe a bit more to drink than they realised, and they went out. So if your, watering hole has a bunch of, breathalyzers, you can just grab one off the wall, like the packets of ketchup that caravan owners are forever stealing. We upset tractor drivers the other day, so caravan owners are getting it today, right? You take one of those home. So in the morning before you get in the car, you do your test and you go, right, I know that I'm safe. That's a win for everyone.
I have an idea, actually, of how you can implement this.
Yeah.
I think this is actually a fantastic idea.
Go for it.
So, basically, a lot of the time you go to a venue of some description and you have to sort of check in with your license plate number, right? Mm-hmm. In order to validate your parking. Otherwise, you have to pay for parking.
Yep.
Right? So, free parking for customers, you've got to validate your parking.
Yep.
To validate your parking, you've got to hand over your keys. Mm-hmm. They go in a lockbox. So, you put in your license registration number. That gives you a number. They put the keys in a lockbox for that number. Mm-hmm. And then when you want to leave, you got to do a breathalyzer test. And if you fail it, they don't give you your keys back.
That's not a bad
And then
idea.
when you show up the next day, for, hopefully, maybe it's one of those pubs that serves breakfast. So you show up the next morning at 9 o'clock, you have to breathalyze again. You get your keys back when you pass the breathalyzer test. And you could do it in a way which removes all kind of human intervention, where, because you have electronic breathalyzers that can be Bluetooth or whatever. So, you just punch in your reg on the device, blow into the breathalyzer, and as soon as that happens, bing, the lockbox opens, they give you your keys, you go home.
Interesting idea. I wonder if people then try to engineer their breathalyzers with Bluetooth to fool the readings. That's the thing. You've always got to bear in mind, if you want to have your JayEmm and the Radiator Arms Britain, you've also got to think there are people that are always going to want to find a way around it. So, like with any government policy, okay, this is great, but how can it be contravened? And is it easy enough for that to happen?
That's absolutely fine. And there is a place for those people in the industrial mincer, which will be running 24/7.
If you're caught cheating the system, you will get turned into dog food.
Yeah.
All right. So in JayEmm's Britain, if we were going to do this as real politicians, what would happen is you'd have to tell me that you were going to make that law before telling anyone else. I would create this product that no one can then have their keys without.
Yeah.
And then
I'd say,
then you'd buy a bunch of shares in my company. Then you'd announce the new law.
Yeah.
Then the shares in the company would go up and we'd make millions.
Yeah.
That's how it works, isn't it?
Yeah. I'd be like, I have decided that the best possible people, and I have definitely done all my research, are the new Antacol system.
Yes.
Is going to be what's used. Did you know that over various points in the past, car manufacturers have actually experimented? In fact, I think, someone correct me if I'm wrong here, there's an example of it.
Volvo?
Volvo might have done it, and I think maybe even BL might have tried it, because there is a car in the British Car Museum, whatever it is, at Coventry, not Coventry, Gaydon. They have a car where the idea was you had to actually blow into a bit to get a breathalyzer reading before the car would start.
Yep.
The problem is, if it is made by BL, you probably either the thing just wouldn't work, or the stench of brute would set it off anyway, so it would immobilize itself.
Or because of the engineering resource that they had there, it'd be one singular wire to bypass the entire thing.
Yeah. Put it in upside down and the car will just start. Or they've sort of wired it so that it's only when you're absolutely leathered the thing will eventually kick into life. It's sort of like a bit of like industrial, what's the Australian stuff? Start, you bastard.
Yes, exactly.
You gotta breathe in pure just alcoholic vapor, and that's what actually gets the thing kicked over. All right, Will, so what are you putting into action?
I tell you what I'm putting into action. It is going to be mandatory that all councils must look after the painted lines at every single junction, every single roadway. It must be done. It must be done regularly as well, so there can be no confusion of anybody pulling up ever to a junction or a roundabout and not knowing what lane to be in. Yeah. This happens far too often in places that you're not 100% sure of where you are, because you can follow a sat nav, you can follow Waze or Google Maps, but Waze and Google Maps really only ever tells you what specific lane to be in.
Not always correctly.
Exactly. Usually on the motorways or dual carriageways, I find there's not everywhere. Not all the A and the B roads do that. And the problem is you'll come up to it and you'll have lanes where you standard as they work, you can only turn left and maybe go straight in one, or it's only left in that and the other one I have to do everything else. So they're not always the same at roundabouts. They're not always the same layout.
My personal favourite. You get this a lot more in London than you do elsewhere. You'll be looking at the road markings. You have two lanes, and the left-hand lane will be like straight over only, and the right-hand lane will be straight over or turn right. And then you get about 200 yards before you get to the junction, and suddenly it goes, actually, do you know how I told you that the right-hand lane could also go straight over? Like, I lied.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, haha, now you're in the wrong lane.
Do you know why? When you approach a roundabout, sorry for non-UK listeners, viewers, this may or may not apply to you, but do you know why when you go to a roundabout that has a
Which
right
for
turning,
our American viewers, that's a very large circle that they put on the road to enable traffic to flow, as opposed to a series of stop signs. Carry on.
They do have roundabouts in the US, but just not very many of them. Although they are actually increasing.
I've seen it. Yeah,
they are increasing them. So the reason why the right-hand lane does generally, for many roundabouts, does not have a right-hand arrow. It generally has a straight arrow, is so that people don't get to the roundabout, get confused, and turn the wrong way into the roundabout.
Yes.
That's the reason why.
I'm talking about junctions, though.
Yeah.
Specifically, there's one just outside Harrods, which always used to do me over.
Yeah.
My grandmother was genuinely convinced that the right-hand lane at roundabouts was only for people that are going the wrong way and wanted to do a U-turn, effectively.
I've encountered those people, actually. There's certain roundabouts. There's one that's on the way to, I think, was it on the way to Rockingham, maybe? That, like, every time we went past it, it was just like whoever was on the left-hand lane just wanted to turn across to go right, even though people in the middle lane wanted to go straight ahead. And I nearly got taken out twice there. And in the end, I just said, that's it. I'm just going to be in the left-hand lane for that roundabout anytime I go through it.
Yeah, there's one up like that near, coming onto the A120 near Braintree, near where the McDonald's and the kind of like the Freeport shopping village places.
Cholesterol Corner.
Yeah, exactly. There's one. It's not over the first roundabout. Sorry, it is over the first roundabout. You go.
I know exactly the roundabout you mean.
You go over and it's got 3 lanes, 2 to go right on and stuff like that. And most of the time, you end up just going around in the left-hand lane because otherwise people will cut across you and do strange things. And it's. I don't know if you guys have ever done this on certain roundabouts. Usually small ones where there's 2 lanes or it's not markings and it's not made clear. Sometimes you just go over it on the middle, and as long as there's nobody for you to cut off, because you must stress, as long as there's nobody beside, we kind of block it a little bit so you can just go round it and not
see.
And that's just due to poor.
Funnily enough, that particular council have got form for this, because I used to drive that road a lot when I had a friend that lived out that way, and there is a smaller roundabout just before that, and it goes off, I think, the A120. Because that's the road that takes you past Stansted Airport. So I do still drive that. But a few miles down the road, it's only like a little single carriageway affair. But there is a roundabout where they've got the 2 lanes marked up. And it's one of those weird roundabouts where the left-hand lane only turns left. The right-hand lane is for effectively everything else. So including going straight over. Now, most people, I think, just assume that at a roundabout, the left-hand lane will get you straight over. But what they've done at this roundabout, rather than put up markings with arrows going left-hand lane goes left, right-hand lane straight over and right, they've just put east and west. Nobody knows which way is east, which way is west. Like, just at some point, I'm going to go down there with some chalk and just be like, right, I'm going to save a life here and just put the arrows on. And
it's the same one coming back actually from like Chelmsford way onto that A120 road. There is one there as you turn in. The way to do it properly is you have to go in that left-hand lane, and then as soon as you get over, you have to turn right to get to the other part. I don't know if it's the same one you're thinking about. It's just some of the ones under Braintree District Council and other places like that are a nightmare.
I assume, by the way, that the same team that will be keeping all of your road markings immaculately shiny and perfectly maintained are the same 24/7 non-stop team that will also be filling in the potholes.
Oh, absolutely. And what they'll also be doing is bringing all the bloody cat's eyes back they've removed.
Oh, yeah.
I hate the fact that a lot of the roads and like kind of single carriageway roads and country-ish kind of lanes which have had them all removed or replaced with tiny piddly things which don't make any sense. And I tell you why, because we've got an abundance of vehicles with LED headlights and people using auto lights which don't always turn off and they don't care about. So you're sitting there in your 20-something-year-old car with yellow headlights that could barely light up, a few feet in front of you, and you were trying to stay in your lane, you were trying to keep on the course, and you're completely blinded from the other side. And back in the day, the only thing you would have is either, maybe some markings that are actually painted properly on the left-hand side of the road, or you'd have those cat's eyes to help you see and navigate through the lanes.
Yeah. Maybe we can get like the day glow green paint that sort of absorbs light. Like kids used to put in their bedroom. So like in the day, it sort of charges up, and then at night, the roads basically glow green.
Yes, that'd be excellent, because
quite good fun.
It's just one of the problems as well because the road surfaces are sometimes repaired so poorly. Actually, the reflection of light, even with LED headlights and things like that, you probably notice you're still not seeing a lot. You're not seeing a lot in front of you, and you only really get any good kind of visibility once you see a signpost or something coming up, which is actually reflective, because it's just not looked after.
To be honest, mate, I think this is damning of the headlights in your Maestro and the Golf.
I think so. I've just put mine on full beams, and it's just like daylight.
I have the same issue in my wife's Clio. It's not all roads. I must stress, it's not all roads. It's just certain roads where they're not maintained properly, where they've taken cat's eyes ways and they've not done the lane markings as well.
Yeah, that is a problem. So, Ant.
Well, you've taken one of mine, which was the potholes thing. Not that I've been affected by them, but I do know that a lot of people are being affected by them, and apparently it's getting worse.
It is.
Then the thing with that frustrates me is that then it's on you to then try and get the money from the council. And a lot of people then just go for their insurance, and then their insurance becomes a problem. And then it's like, maybe it should be mandated that the insurance company has to go after the council or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, but you've taken my potholes one. So I suppose something along the lines of middle lane hoggers
in the industrial mincer.
Actually, do you know what?
Or just dangled above. How about, as appropriate, why don't we dangle them above the industrial mincer for about half an hour until they realise that there's a hazard, and then they can be told to think about what they've done.
The other option could be like mandated black boxes that go in the cars, and like if you've been in the middle lane for longer than like a minute, then it starts counting down and then basically explodes.
And then you get electrocuted.
Or you get electrocuted, yes. Something like that. Yep. Now, I went through a bit of a phase. I do try. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we all have our moments where, we've gone past the car on the inside, and then maybe we haven't realised, we could probably move over. Or you kind of like, you get past that car and you're like, oh, I'm catching up to the one in front. Should I go in or should I? Because if I go in, I'm probably going to be there for like 10 seconds and come back out. So maybe I should stay in this lane. And then for whatever reason, something happens up ahead and the person pulls off and you're like, oh, now there's this big gap. And it can end up looking like you were middle lane hogging, but you weren't. You were just trying to read the traffic. And then there are other situations where the person's just being an absolute mindless, driving without due care and attention plonker. And those are the ones I'm talking about. So I'm not trying to be particular about the odd mistake.
No, because I think it's one of those things. Again, we talked about the A12 and the A14 and stuff like that, and how some of them are 3 lanes. Well, certainly on the A12, 3 lanes in places. It's a case of, I believe, if you're in the middle lane and you're actually making progress, you're not holding anybody else up, and there are vehicles you are overtaking, then that's just normal driving. But it's as long as you make sure that you're really aware of what is in your rear view mirror, and that you're not holding anybody up, and that nobody is passing you on the left hand side, then it's different, rather than just sitting there and just going at the same speed and just going, oh, I'm in the middle of the lane.
See, now the approach I take with middle lane hoggers is what I think is the best one, which is that if you can, and they're outside lane hoggers as well.
Oh, they're the worst.
Middle lane hoggers, to be honest, I just go past them. You just go past them. But outside lane hoggers, particularly when there's 2 perfectly clear lanes on the inside, and I do not want to undertake. I am aware that in many circumstances it may be legal to do so, but it is not necessarily safe to do so, because the sort of person that sits blindly in the outside lane is also the sort of person that's likely to just go left at some point in time without warning or checking their blind spots or their mirrors.
Well, that happened to someone we know recently, where someone literally just swiped straight across them.
Yep. So what I do is I approach them, I maintain a safe and sensible distance, and you get 1 flash, which, as far as I'm aware, within the context of the law, this is permitted, because what you're simply doing is making the other road user aware of your presence. You do not sit there, flash, beat on the horn. That's intimidation of another road user. That should not be allowed, and that is not currently allowed. But 1 flash to remind them, or in some cases, I think, wake them, and then typically they will move over. If they don't, I then feel it is the safe and responsible thing to do to get yourself past them in as safe and swift a manner as you can, whilst respecting all of the rules of the road, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, in that situation, if it's a 3 lanes and they're in the outside lane, what I'll try to do is I'll do exactly the same thing. I'll put my indicator on to the right, because clearly there's no other lane there, but it means I'm trying to get
very
past you.
Very European of you.
Yeah. And then if they don't get it, then what I'll do is, obviously checking mirrors and all that, indicate back to get to the farthest inside lane, so that there's a whole lane in between us, so that there is an opportunity for me to react if they then come across, because there'll be time for me to do something about it.
I also think something I want to stress is that we are probably all people that do defensive driving, not aggressive as well. Like certainly us 3 here, I can't imagine any of us here going up and flashing and beeping at people and swearing at them and stuff like that. That's just not the good way to do it, because that is the way that accidents happen, and that is the way that you frighten people in front of you, and that is why you make them kind of actually make mistakes and end up them having issues. But it's just worth stressing that even when we get frustrated, we're still doing things safely. We don't want anybody to think that we're being reckless under any situation.
Do you know what I mean? Apart from in Germany especially, I found just the lane discipline there was brilliant. So human beings have the capacity to do this well. And every time I saw it being done badly in Germany, you look at number plate and it usually had something like FR or, NL on it. It wasn't a DE plate. It wasn't a German plate on the car of the person that was doing it. And another thing that I think is little known, certainly my experience certainly in England at least, and actually Wales, is that if there is a faster car behind you, you're supposed to pull over at the next safe opportunity to let them past. It doesn't say anything about whether you're going at the speed limit, or at least you think you're going at the speed limit, because maybe your car is just a really inaccurate car and you think you're doing 58, which is good enough in a 60 zone, but actually for everyone else you're doing 50. You're supposed to pull out of the way. Now Scotland, people did that. And the first time it happened, I was like, oh, are they okay? They're literally just pulling over to let us pass. And we were in your F12 when that happened the first time. And I was just like, oh, that's strange.
The F12 has excellent, what I call the Autobahn factor. Basically, like when it pulls up in your rearview mirror, you see it and you go, I'm going to get out of his way. And yeah, no, you're right. This is not a one-off. I have travelled up to Scotland many times and done many miles on the roads up there, and the locals are generally excellent at getting out of your way. And what I love about this is it makes everything safer, because it means you are then more likely to be more patient with them, knowing that they're going to find a safe place to pull over and allow you to go past, meaning you don't have to make an overtake, which may at first glance appear to be a safe one, but perhaps there's something that you've missed. You know, this can happen. We're all human, mistakes do happen. It's brilliant. In America, it's the same. Whenever I've been driving out in the States, generally speaking, like, they will respect the faster flowing traffic and move over to allow you to make progress. But yeah, down in England, and the closer to London you get, the worse people are at it.
I did get one person when we were in Scotland who did the opposite, and there was a perfectly arrow straight section of road, and there was one car maybe something like 200 meters further up the road.
Yeah.
There was this, I don't know, some sort of like, I don't know what you call them, SUV things. I've heard of them.
Yeah.
SUV things, Land Rover type things.
Yeah.
Right. And they were going ridiculously slow. It was a 60 road and they were doing like 35. Anyway, so came around some bends, saw this beautiful arrow straight. There was no junctions, no hazards whatsoever. So I just gently pulled out because I didn't want to, because I know what the F12 is like. It can be quite scary if you're not used to that kind of sound. Pulled out gently, just started a gentle overtaking maneuver to do this. And then they pulled out. And they blocked me. So I backed off, and then they pulled back into the left. And there was still loads of road left. So I went forward, and they blocked me again. So I had to pull in behind them.
In the industrial mincer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that's jealousy? Because, or do you think it's a case of, this is the way I believe the road, this is the speed limit I believe this road should be driven. I don't think it's safe for 60, therefore everybody is going to do the speed limit I think is
the irony is the people do this, and I've seen this a few times, they actually often tend to be the most dangerous drivers on the road.
But they think they're the safest.
Yeah.
And then you do get those people, it's like, well, I'm doing the speed limit, so there's absolutely no reason for you to go past me. And it's like, but then they've not noticed that there's been a white circle with a diagonal black line through it, which I've talked about in a previous episode. And think that the speed limit currently is 40, when in fact it's 60, and they're still doing 36 miles an hour.
And it's getting worse, I think, in modern cars, because I think I've yet to encounter a modern vehicle that has got the speed limit correct at all times I've been there.
I was on my, even Google Maps and Waze get it wrong as well, because I was on my way here, and I was on one of the roads, and I remember noticing on Google Maps telling me that it was 40. And I was like, no, okay, fine. I'm better safe than sorry. You know, there was no one else really on the road, on that particular stretch of road, no one close enough for me to worry about the flow of traffic. So I just went 40. So I thought, today I'm just going to double check, you know, and came off this roundabout. As you went onto the roundabout, it had the white circle with the diagonal line, which for non-UK viewers means national speed limit applies. There's different speed limits for different types of vehicles, for different types of roads, etc., etc. In this particular case, it was going onto a dual carriageway, which makes it 70 in a road car. So I just went round and just carried on at 70. But meanwhile, Google Maps is sort of like showing me red circle, you know, 70 miles an hour, bad. Red circle, 40 miles an hour, what you should be doing. And it absolutely wasn't.
I also have experienced the opposite. So I had a very unusual one. And this, funnily enough, was up on the way to the event where I know you drove the F12. For a little bit, Google told me that the speed limit on a single carriageway national speed limit piece of road, which is 60, was 85.
Oh.
Now, this was odd for a couple of reasons, because first off, there's nowhere in Britain that has a speed limit of 85. And the 5 bit in of itself is very unusual, because no speed limit I know of in Britain ends in a 5. It's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and 70. In Scotland, they do put signs up saying 70, which we don't get in England. But this is really weird. Now, I drove that same piece of road a couple of times that week, and I eventually figured out what it was, because shortly after, it dropped the speed limit to 55. What it was is that piece of road was adjacent to a railway line. And clearly the Google Maps van had been down there, and the railway speed limit sign looks exactly the same as the road one. So the Google van had gone down, seen what looks like a speed limit sign with 85 written in it, and gone, that must be the speed limit for the road then.
Oh, but I've heard stories about also on modern cars. One in particular from a friend of mine. He had a car that's got the cameras and is trying to know what the speed limit is based on reading the signs. And apparently it had read the speed limit sign of 100 because on the back of a lorry. Because in
you got the
Europe,
little sign saying we got 100 kph, or kmh.
Yeah, and it is. It's 100 kmh for a lorry, which is 62 miles an hour.
Which is 90 for a lorry.
Is it 90? Oh, right. Well, maybe it was 90 then. I'm sure he said 100. Maybe it depends on the size of the lorry.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah. Anyway, he told me 100. And the car started accelerating
to
above
100.
70 miles an hour towards 100 miles an hour before he managed to stop it and take over.
This is part of my problem with this technology and the notion of making any of it mandatory, which is that at the present time, we could take one of the symbols over there from Will's little drum kit, paint it white, black, and red, and put 99 on it, and then stand next to the road with a mariachi band waving it at people, and any human being is going to look at it and be like, are those people all right? Whereas a car won't see the mariachi band. What it will see is a 99 mile an hour speed limit, which then leads you onto a very interesting debate of, well, the car can be very, very easily fooled. And so the scenario you've described, if that scenario happened, let's just say you were standing in front of a speed camera, right, with a fake sign saying 100 mile an hour, and the car accelerated up enough that you're going to get down from speeding. Now, maybe 5 seconds later, you realise what the heck's going on, but it's too late. You're like, now, if you wanted to be cheeky, someone out there, please do this. Please do this. But don't blame us for you doing it because we didn't tell you to do it. But just to make a point, I would quite like to see someone just put a fake speed sign on the back of a speed camera. Someone's car will do exactly that, because I would like to see the discussion had, because I think it's a discussion that needs to be had about responsibility in vehicles.
Well, this is interesting. I think there was a chap called Jack Massey Welsh or something like that. He had a channel that was active when the Tesla's Model 3s first came out, and I can't remember the outcome. I need to look at it again, but he did an experiment, I think it was, by fooling his Tesla into going faster with autopilot by making fake road signs. And if I remember correctly, I think there were some occasions where it actually accelerated past the speed limit that it was supposed to be. Now, I do know an interesting fact about my wife's car is that I'm pretty sure it doesn't just use the cameras, but it uses GPS data from their sat nav as well, where the speeds are processed in. Because her Renault Clio, she got a 2024 Renault Clio. It went in for service, and when it came back, there was a cable for the sat-nav disconnected with the GPS, so the car had no idea where it was. That's fine, that's neither here nor there. They fixed that the next week. But during that time, the speed limit recognition stuff was just going haywire, because even though it was looking at road signs, I don't think it had a second kind of confirmation choice to actually, say, yes, this is correct. And I've noticed this sometimes. The car, when I drive it now, will see a speed limit sign, and it won't change, I think, for a little bit, and I'm assuming until it gets confirmation as well from the maps to make sure that it's giving you that kind of double kind of reinforcement.
Or it just didn't see the sign.
Well, there is also a possibility of that.
Yeah, and what I found out afterwards was that apparently the manufacturer of that particular vehicle did end up putting in a software update which basically capped the speed limit.
Yes.
So that it couldn't go over the maximum speed limit in the UK.
I read a great article about the development of the W12 for Bentley, And the Bentley engineers were very, very disappointed that somebody at VW capped their cruise control at 300 kmh because they wanted to be able to set the cruise control at 200 mile an hour because the car was faster than the Conti GT because of the aerodynamics of it. And they're like, we wanted to be able to hit cruise control at 200 mile an hour, but some killjoy somewhere decided we couldn't do it. Now, you mentioned earlier the A14. Now, one of the greatest blights of the A14, a road that I'm very pleased to say I rarely have to drive these days, is heavy goods vehicles. And this incessant desire they have to spend half an hour of everybody else's time getting about 10 yards further down the road and in front of the next HGV. I have a solution for this.
Okay.
And it is a genius one, taken from the world of motorsport. KERS.
Right, so give them a little
push to pass button. Yeah. So basically, you're limited to 56 mile an hour, but I will give you 20 seconds of 70, and then you get past, you get done, and then just can everybody please get on with their lives?
I like it.
I was just going to say ban them from overtaking on any road that doesn't have at least 3 lanes, from overtaking another, but that's even funnier.
And what would be interesting though, actually, the way you could do it is just to make sure that they can all keep going at 60. I don't think you should allow the trucks to go at 70. I think that's a bad idea. But what you could do, because it's all going to be, this is modern technology, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So all of the vehicles know where they each other are. So you just press the button to slow the one down in front.
Oh, yeah.
For you to get past them.
The blue shell.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And
so it's spinning around.
Yeah. Basically, once you get within a certain distance, it establishes a Bluetooth connection with it. They negotiate who's in front and who's behind based on GPS. And the one behind just presses the button and that slows the other one down and they can get past. Now, the reason that I get really wound up by that is because, if you're on a 2-lane dual carriageway, that means you can do 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
In a normal car. The lorries, they're limited to 60.
56.
Oh, 56. Sorry, my bad.
Well, that's an interesting thing, actually. Technically speaking, in Britain, they are limited to 60. However, to keep in line with the European Union, we limited to 56. And the reason it was 56, which is an odd number, is because it's 90 kph. That's how I know it's 90 kph. But when we left the EU, we didn't raise their limit.
Right.
It's really weird, and I don't know why that is.
Well, in my experience, they will do 60 anyway.
Yeah.
And I know they're doing 60 because when I get stuck behind them, I'm looking at the GPS to see what speed I'm doing, and it's telling me that I'm doing 60.
Because their speedo will be accurate.
Yeah. Unlike your typical road car. Anyway, it really winds me up because sometimes you've got like an almost empty road apart from these 2 lorries, and then you're like, okay, they're tailgating each other. Is the one behind trying to save fuel or something by being that close, or are they getting ready for an overtake? Not so sure. Anyway, so you're kind of approaching at a reasonable pace, and then you just see them pull out, and that's it. They've taken up those 2 lanes. You have to slow right the way down to 56 miles an hour, obviously, and just sit behind them. And it just takes him forever, an absolute age to get past the lorry. In the meantime, what was a completely empty road behind you has now become, a complete DRS train, driving really slowly train, of cars behind you. And then they're tailgating you where you had nice empty road behind you before. It just really winds me up.
Now, I want to say, lorry drivers out there, we do love you and we do appreciate what you do. Our country literally could not run without you. Most of the world could not run without lorry drivers. But for those who are lorry drivers in the comments, I'm sure some of you will be listening. Maybe you're listening to the podcast on your travels, which we say thank you for listening anyway. But
obviously, it's not you that we're talking about.
Exactly. No.
It's the other ones.
It's the other ones. But for people that do, let us know why it is you're insistent on overtaking, because I genuinely would like to know. I don't drive a lorry. I've never driven a lorry, probably never will. I'm curious, and I'm sure we all are, as to why this happens so regularly. Is it a case of you are going to save yourself that much time, or is it because of your time cards? You got to get somewhere and you can't be, on your clock, on your hours, things like that. We don't know. We don't know. We'd like to know, so let us know.
I've always wondered, when you see sort of like lorries tailgating each other, I've always wondered, are they drafting, right, and then taking turns with who's drafting in order to save fuel? because the one that's behind, that's literally like a car's length behind the lorry in front. And I just think to myself, goodness gracious, like if the one in front stopped, that would be the end of everything. And this whole motorway is going to be, closed for hours. But then you see them kind of go past and then they pull back in. And then the one behind starts tailgating. Are you sharing the draft in order to, or the slipstream in order to save fuel? Just wondering. And if you're not, please don't do that. It's a bad idea. It's really dangerous.
Also, as another way to spin it, let us know, lorry drivers, in the comments, what are the worst habits you see car drivers doing as well?
Yes.
That we'd like to hear too.
Pulling in front of a lorry as a junction is approaching or a roundabout.
Yeah, and assuming that their brakes are going to work just as well as yours.
A wagon is loaded up with a lot of weight.
Yeah. Yeah. To be fair, I do know quite a few lorry drivers, and the behaviour of other lorry drivers, I think, incenses them far more than it does us.
Probably because they're lorry drivers and they know what the other lorry drivers should be doing. I'll tell you what winds me up, actually. When you see people, like you're on a, again, 2-lane or even a 3-lane dual carriageway, and someone in their car kind of pulls right alongside the lorry as you're driving along. And I'm like, that's not a good idea, because right where you are could be their blind spot.
No. Oh, I want to get past a lorry as quickly as I safely can. I don't want to be there, because that if an accident happens, it's most of the time because they just haven't seen you. Sometimes I've heard that the only way a lorry driver has ever seen that you're there is through that little kind of porthole by the kind of the bit where the feet are.
A lot of the modern trucks have these kind of cameras now and everything, which is better. And many of them will have the sort of wide-angle mirror system if they don't have the
probably
cameras.
blind spot monitoring as well, I imagine, too.
Probably blind spot monitoring. But, I mean, look, Tim, Shmee 150, his Senna was taken out by a lorry. Exactly that. He was alongside the lorry on a dual carriageway or a motorway, and the lorry just decided, I'm going to change lanes. Didn't see his Senna there and cut across. I think the door alone was like tens of thousands of pounds or something crazy like that.
I couldn't tell you, but I did see the aftermath, and yeah.
Didn't one of the guys from Car Throttle at the time, now the Auto Alex universe, was it Jack? Didn't he get
pushed down the road
by a Royal Mail lorry?
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
I know there was something random like Ellie Taylor was one of the people.
Ellie Golding.
Yeah. So because the lorry driver didn't have a clue.
Yeah,
and he's pushing a car down the road as a clip of it, and the guy didn't know. So. Another thing on the topic of road repairs, because I think this is not just us car drivers having a bit of a rant.
Are you changing the subject?
No.
On road repairs, and we're going to talk about lorries still.
Well, this is all related.
Okay, I'll let you
related.
Carry on.
It's all rules of the road and everything else.
All right. I'm going to bring it back to lorries.
You can do that. Any repair that the council has made to a road or whatever, particularly if it's a large section, not a pothole I'm talking about. If they've repaved a road, the council should be forced to walk it barefoot. And I think very suddenly we'd see an end to this silly nonsense that is surface dressing. Like, I have never in my entire life understood who could say that the best way to repair a road is to leave a shitload of loose gravel on it and then go home for 2 weeks. As a motorcyclist, or at least former motorcyclist, on a regular basis, like, that is psychotic. Like, that is hideously irresponsible. Ignoring the many claims for, punctured windscreens and other damage done to vehicles by the guy that goes through at 50 mile an hour, not caring because he's in some beat up old Astra van, right? It's dangerous because if you try and stop on it, you can't. No matter what speed you're doing, it's loose gravel.
And I've seen, there was on the A10 I was driving on, a while back, I think it was like last year, and they'd done exactly that on a section of the A10, but they'd done it like after you go round a bend, after an off-ramp had occurred, and they didn't tell you about it until you came round the bend and then had to slow right the way down really, really quickly from 70 miles an hour to their posted 40. Now, I came round there, slowed right the way down, got it down to 40 miles an hour, and the sounds of the stones was unbearable. I ended up having to creep at about 15 miles an hour in a 40 section because I'm not destroying the carbon fiber on my car because of your stupid stones. And unfortunately, because I wasn't warned before the junction, I had no option. I couldn't come off. I couldn't avoid it. So I had to drive through it at this point. So in the end, I pulled off into a lay-by that was just up the road because I could see cars coming from behind me, and they weren't slowing down.
No.
They were all doing 50, 60 miles an hour through this recommended 40 section, which should have been 20 at most. It was unbearable. I just pulled over and I just waited until there was a nice big gap, and then eventually I pulled out and I just did my
I've had
15,
it a couple
20
of
mile an hour
times when
cruise.
I've been reviewing cars. And obviously I know the roads that I review very, very well indeed, but sometimes you'll just come across a road and you'll be like, oh, this wasn't here yesterday.
Yep.
And you're driving somebody's car, and like you say, there's no warning. There's sometimes nowhere that you can safely stop and turn around, and you're driving through and you go, I am really, really, really sorry, but I did have to drive your car through this because I just didn't have a choice. Like, you know, if I'd known, I'd have done something about it, but I didn't know. Anyway, back to your lorry-shaped soapbox.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, I think there should be something against just driving alongside a lorry at over a certain speed, because when I get to a lorry, what I do is I kind of like leave a gap, so I run staggered. I wait till the car that's getting past them to completely get past them. Then, once there's enough of a gap on the other side of the lorry, then I'll go through. And often, in that situation, you'll have a lorry here and you'll have cars behind, and obviously the cars behind are all tailgating. So if you try to pull into any gap, you'll have a half a second in front and behind if you're lucky. So I just wait. And then the cars behind me, they start tailgating me and like flashing their lights, like go, go, go. And it's like, no, just chill. I'll go once there's a gap. And then you go. And then the thing is, you think, okay, well, the person behind me clearly must have realized, oh, he's just being safe. Oh, no. They're going to tailgate you and try and push you to do the same thing with to go alongside the next lorry. And I was like, I just don't have time for it.
Honestly, I'm one of those people where I see tailgaters in my mirror, and actually I feel like I just let them get on with it. I back off. I take their stopping distance, and
add it to mine.
Yes, absolutely.
Then gradually create that space.
That's exactly
until I can just get out of their way and let them go be an idiot without me.
That's exactly what I do, because if I need to stop, I'm going to be able to have a more of a chance of stopping a little bit slower and having them hopefully not go into the back of me.
So what we do, James, is we need some sort of device in cars that if there is someone tailgating you and there isn't anyone else around, that you can press a button, it deploys like a charge underneath the car, like a mine, and then it kind of like pushes the car up, and then they can do like one of those like spins and like in the movies in slow motion, and then they will never ever do that again.
So for a while in my old Volkswagen Transporter van, I had a broken rear wiper on it, and it had a rear wash wipe, and the way it broke is that if you put the wash wipe on, it would just spew half the bottle of the screen wash out of the rear, and it would cover whatever vehicle was behind. Now, I didn't fix that for about a year, and for legal reasons, I definitely didn't put that on more than one occasion when people were right behind me, forcing them to slow down and have to wipe their wipers because their entire windscreen was covered.
Just given me an
evil
idea. Like, I would obviously not condone this, but if you got someone that's being a real like genuine like weapons grade pillock, right? You should have filled your washer fluid with beer and phoned him in for drink driving. So then when the copper turns and goes, have we been drinking? He's like, no. Like, well, your whole car stinks. Like, down the station with you slag.
No, something really potent like whiskey.
Yes.
But a really cheap, nasty one.
Exactly. Yeah. To go along with the driver's ability to drive, cheap and nasty. I once, in one of my old Peugeot 106s, had the reverse lights on a switch on the dash as well. So sometimes someone would tailgate me. I'd put the switch on and look in the rearview mirror, and they'd see the reverse lights come on while I was doing like 50, 60 miles an hour. And the look of horror on their faces as they then backed off very quickly was quite fun.
As a friend of mine, one of their favourite hobbies was they had, it was completely illegal, but also equally hilarious. They had some sirens and blues and twos fitted to their van. And their favourite hobby was driving up behind people. This is just after the mobile phone ban had come into effect. And they drive up behind people on their phone, put the sirens on, and then just see them like just flailing about, panicking, like trying to get rid of their phone. And then it was back up, they drive past slowly, pointing them, going, ha ha.
Do you know what? Actually, in my under my kind of like rulership, anybody, and I'm sorry if you people out there do it. I don't care. This is a hill I'm willing to die on. anybody that is sit there driving down the road and they've got their mobile phone, they're playing with it, they're texting, they're using it, they're doing things, they're sending voice notes, doing stuff like that, straight in the mincer.
Yeah, straight in the mincer.
That's it. They're literally, and they're going, we might have to cut that out.
I wish I hadn't asked that question.
You shouldn't have asked that question.
We might have to cut that out.
I'm leaving this bit in, and the what was said is going to be left to the imagination of the viewers. And if I'm being honest with you, ladies and gentlemen at home, I feel a little bit sick.
I think I'm editing this one. One of us is editing this one. Either way, we will have to censor that one.
So yes, mobile phone users, I'm sorry, there's options for, even if it's a clip-on visor, hands-free thing in an old car that is 20 quid from bloody, Woolworth, well, not Woolworths anymore, but, Roy's, something like that. It will allow you to have a hands-free conversation. Yep. There are options. I don't care what car you're in, there is an option to do it, and you are the scum of the earth.
They've done tests, talking about street driving, they've done tests where using a mobile phone can be as distracting and as bad as being something like just slightly over the limit.
Yeah.
See, I would love to, we would never ever get permission to do this, but I would genuinely love to do this just as an experiment, like rent an airfield or a track somewhere and try and do a few like really basic car control challenges, and then like do one while trying to send you a text, or film, get a good selfie, and then you can get me lagered up, which will be hilarious for you because I've never really been drunk in my entire life, so I have no idea what's going to happen.
That'd be cheap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, honestly, a bottle of Brut and I'm anyone's. So. But I think somehow there might be some sort of insurance or health and safety issues with doing that.
I
can't
imagine,
possibly think why.
Yeah.
I don't think Millbrook's going to sort of like. So, what's your health and safety assessment like? Well, he could drown. So anyway, okay,
they've done it on simulators though.
It definitely does. I also seem to recall Brainiac, I'm sure it was, or Brainiac Science Abuse did like a segment called Tired or Wired. And it was basically like, we've got someone that's been awake for like 24 hours. And then we've also got somebody that we've filled with like, a billion cups of coffee. And we're trying to get them to perform basic tasks and see like, do you perform better? Like absolutely, like, just like wide awake, like a sort of, bat that's just been startled, or like knackered. I'm sure having like, I'm sure it's something someone said like the effects of being awake for like 24 hours are like the equivalent of having like half a bottle of scotch.
Yeah.
Like
it's really bad. Yeah. Well, we know someone who unfortunately did fall asleep at the wheel and did result in a crash recently.
You know what? That video actually, because it's obviously on YouTube, it was Jack number 27, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And
although I should go pains to say that as far as we were aware, he wasn't driving tired, or certainly didn't think that he was driving tired, but things can happen. So,
well, that video has actually stuck with me. We went to the meet the day after I got the Mercedes. I just had like 4 or 5 hours sleep that night. I got Ant to drive it.
Because you did. Very responsible.
Because I was like, do you know what? I could drive, but I do not feel like I am capable of it. I do not feel like I'll be in control of the car, and I feel like it would safer to get used to it. And we still had a great time.
Yep.
And you got to cruise in the Merc as well. And
again, always a joy.
It was a great time. So I think it is also important for.
All right, so.
Yeah. Sorry, makeup, the other thing.
Oh, you're doing makeup?
Oh, yes, doing makeup.
I've seen people applying makeup. I've seen people applying makeup while driving.
Yeah.
That should be the same as using a mobile phone.
Yeah.
So, sorry, there's an image in my head that needs to leave. It's gone. Right. So it was Will's punishment. So basically, two things for a genuinely better Britain. You two, honestly. Right. You're saying earlier you're not sure what to clip for a short.
Yeah.
Like
that bit.
All of this nonsense over here, right? Okay, so 2 policies for a better Britain, which I actually genuinely believe, hand on heart, these would improve things. And these are somewhat London-centric. And I appreciate that a big problem is a lot of rules of the road now are basically targeted at cities and don't really apply very well to the countryside. But also, London, Europe's largest city, it is our capital. I would like it to be a lot better to drive through than it is. There's a couple of things that I'd like to see done. And these are related. First off, we have a bit of a, you might even call it an epidemic at the moment, with utes, I believe is the technical term, on the electric bicycles and scooters, often unlicensed ones or that have been illegally modified. I followed one last night. Chap pulled away and did a good steady 25 mile an hour without pedaling.
Oh, I nearly got run over by one last night.
Right? Okay. Now, we are taking the wrong approach with this, because the approach at the moment is to demonize, to destroy, and to try and, get these things off the road. I think this is the wrong approach. I think the British government is being very backwards, and I personally believe criminally negligent in this matter, because we are supposedly facing this environmental crisis. And you know what? For a second, let's park that, right? London's congested, right? And a brilliant solution to getting around London in a swift and easy manner is an electric bicycle. It's a blooming brilliant invention, right? If I still lived in London, I would have one without a shadow of a doubt. In fact, living where I do now, I would have one, because the roads that you have to take to get into town where I am, they're all national speed limit. There aren't really proper paths or cycle paths. And so to do it on a bicycle, it's a bit risky, it's a bit dangerous. But if you had a self-powered bicycle, which could get you up to about 30 mile an hour or help you up the hills properly, I would have one. I would use it all the time. It'd be better for me, and it'd be better for the planet, and it'd be better for the roads, right? Because there'd be less full-sized cars when you don't need them. So I think these should be licensed, insured, taxed, because they're not actually inherently illegal. What's illegal about them is the fact that because they're self-powered and there isn't a category that they fit into, they don't have registrations, and therefore they aren't insured. And it's the fact that they're not insured is what then makes them illegal. Nobody said that they're illegal. It's just that they're not legal, if that makes sense. So I would like to see these things legalized and made proper. Also, the same with any of the rental bikes and things that you get in London. Have a way of putting a license plate on the thing, because also then when you do that, you then have a way of being able to track vehicles that are being used in illicit manners. Tracking the thing, registering it, giving it a proper VIN number, that sort of thing is also going to help with the criminal element of it as well, make them a little harder to steal, or make the stolen ones a lot more obvious. Obviously, anybody that's using one of them to drive around or ride around back alleys, in a dark hoodie with no lights on, bike goes in the industrial mincer, and if they do it again, they can follow it. But yeah, to me, it's just absolutely moronic that we're not looking to do that. Lots of other places in the world are, and to me, it just makes total sense.
Well, we are looking to do it because there are trials going on in various cities where they have licensed,
but not the self-powered bikes, as far as I know. The scooters, I think, we've got. Yeah. But we're so far behind.
Could you do an option like how almost like they insure the cars in America, but instead of insuring the car, insure the person for any of these? So you as the person have an insurance. If it's going to be too much of a pain to try and get all these things VIN'd and registered, go, okay, well, you've got...
Genius. Will, you're an absolute genius. And that's why you're our Deputy Transport Minister, right? So it's a category on your license, right? That you have your license for your e-bike, right? And as part of it, you just pay for a year, a nominal fee, and it goes into like a national fund for running down old ladies that step out in front of you and that sort of thing, right? Because they are also changing the law on that as well at the minute. You may or may not be aware that anybody that's on a bicycle that either seriously harms or kills somebody, the penalty available is actually really quite restrictive, because the only thing they can do them on is actually the rule from which Furious Driving gets its channel name, which is wanton and furious driving. It's a charge meant for carriages being driven badly. There is no law meant for cars that also applies to bicycles. So you can kill somebody on a bicycle, and I think the limit they can give you is like 2 years, which is, given the fact that sometimes this has been a result of aggression, not just, stupidity, that's quite overly lenient. The other thing, and this all links in, that I would really like to see done is I think that the whole ULEZ zone bit and all that should be taken a lot more seriously. London just has too many bloomin' cars in it. I think that if you're going to travel into the city and you're going to do it in some dirty old diesel or whatever, look, London's rubbish to drive through, right? Particularly really central London, what used to be the congestion charge, about 10, 15 years ago. Okay, this is the section. I'm not talking about within the M25, all right? But
what still is the congestion charge zone?
Yeah, well, the M25 is now, but it wasn't before.
No, that's ULEZ.
Sorry, you're correct. Yes, the ULEZ has expanded. Congestion charges. The congestion charges changed because the congestion charges started small, then got big, then got smaller again, and it's changed.
Yeah, they
around.
expanded it to West London, and then they
it's the 406
contracted it
basically,
again.
isn't it? Like the anyway.
No, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Anyway, the point is, what I think should be built is a set of 4 massive park and rides. Right, basically north, east, south, and west of London. Points at which you can drive your car to. It is outside any form of, ULEZ, congestion charge, or whatever, and you can park your car up there, and you pay a fee, and that fee also includes a day's travel card for you, and you can get into London. And basically, you can pay for that by charging people for the parking, and once you've paid for the car parks, it's done. Also, by the way, I am scrapping on day 1 the dark crossing charge.
Yes.
I think that's a good idea. I think that's a really good idea, actually, because then it might incentivize people who can perhaps still keep these cars that they have that are lovely and don't go to waste, and still be able to go around in London and maybe have it in an amount, that you pay that makes sense for it to encourage people to use public transport more. But I've also got something did you want to go first?
After you.
I've also got something else I would like to add when it comes to classic vehicles. Now, I am, and most insurance companies probably would agree, when a vehicle hits about 25 years old, you think, okay, that's coming up to being a classic, isn't it? I would say the tax exemption should start from 25 years old, personally, because we know most people who have got a car that's 25 years old, it's highly unlikely, unless they're kind of a little bit quirky or like their older cars, are daily driving a 25-year-old vehicle. And I think this may be controversial as well. MOT exemption should be scrapped. I think all kind of, passenger cars, I can understand if it's maybe certain historic vehicles, we'd have to figure it out. But from a certain date onwards, any vehicles before then can still remain perhaps MOT exempt, especially if the MOT laws were different and more vague back then. But after a certain point, they should be scrapped, because the amount of cars, classics you see on the road that actually aren't very well maintained, I think there's a lot more out there than people would like to admit.
I think there could be exemptions from sections of the MOT.
Perhaps.
Well, you just introduce a classic MOT.
Yes, something
and
like
you can
that.
make it a sort of every other year item, because there is, and a lot of people don't seem to understand this, there is a legal requirement for your vehicle, if it is on the road, to be roadworthy.
Yep.
Now, if you went and got an MOT yesterday, that does not guarantee that today your vehicle is roadworthy. The same goes for anybody driving their car to the MOT station. If you know that the thing has a death trap underneath, you are not legal. And I think I agree. Now, I disagree about the tax exemption. I think there should be a classic tax bracket up to a certain point, but it should be relatively low. I will take the fight to people that email me all the time and say, James, why don't you do a video moaning about how awful it is that we have to pay lots and lots of tax for cars? And I refuse to do that video, and I continue to refuse to do that video for one really simple reason, which is that, like it or not, in Britain, we actually have it really good compared to just about everywhere else in Europe, including even our neighbours over in the Republic of Ireland, right? Tax on vehicles there is a lot higher than it is here. And you'll always get these geniuses. For some reason, I always associate them with Ford Capri groups. I don't know why, but I do. They'll always be on there being like, because that's how Capri people talk, apparently. Like Richard Nixon, they love to have a moan about the fact that they only drive their Capri, 500 yards a year before it breaks down. Whereas why is it that Doris next door can drive her brand new Yaris 200,000 miles a year and she has to pay less tax? Well, personally, I think in terms of pollution per mile, I think the Capri, you get quite a good deal, because those things are atrocious. But also, these same people, if you said to them like, oh, so are you maybe suggesting that you should be billed on account of how many miles you drive?
No.
Oh,
Pay per mile, no.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, they go incandescent with rage. But yeah, sorry, Ant.
Well, I wanted you to know that I wanted to add to that, actually, because I have an issue with the justification for road tax. So I would, as Transport Minister, I would immediately remove all BS justifications for pretty much everything to do with road policy.
Yeah.
And make sure that we're just honest about it.
Sensible policies for a happier Britain. Yep.
Yeah. So rather than we're going to have higher taxes for these higher polluting vehicles in terms of how many grams of CO2 per mile, I would get rid of that, because you've already got a tax on these higher polluting cars. It's called fuel duty.
And VAT.
And VAT on the fuel duty.
Yeah.
So I think that's a BS justification, and I do think it is relevant as to how many miles you do in a year, because it makes no sense to say tax your F12 at a much higher amount on the basis of it's much more polluting than that Toyota Yaris if you do 2,000 miles a year and they do 20,000 miles for the year, because the deterrent, the financial deterrent for you is the fuel duty and the VAT. And quite frankly, if you're buying an F12, what's an extra 500-600 quid?
Yeah,
or 700 quid or whatever it is now.
You know, when you buy it, what's $5,000 on a? I mean, the new 12-cylinder is what, £400,000 to £500,000. Like, who's even going to notice another few grand in there? And I think that's why they've done it, is because they go like, is anybody actually going to not buy one of these cars because that's on there? Yeah. And again, is actually also a hell of a lot lower than in a lot of other places around the world. So, you know.
But the thing is, I would just say, we need money, we're making you pay for it. That's what I would do. None of this, well, you're buying a polluting car, so we're going to have this tax that actually won't deter you from buying the car in the first place and has absolutely no impact on the environment because it won't change how you drive your car, because fuel duty would be the thing that would change it if anything was going to change it. No, just, we need cash, making you pay for it. Just be honest.
Pony up.
Yeah. And then maybe we could do the things that the that people think that the vehicle excise duty does, and actually pay for the road repairs, even though it doesn't, because that's a common misconception.
It used to.
We exactly. Oh, we pay our road tax and our potholes are bad. Well, that's not how it works anymore.
When did it used to?
Well, there was actually earmarked specifically for road maintenance many years ago, but then I think they removed
basically that. No taxes are hypothecated. People always think that that's how that works.
Yeah, but it's not tax technically. It's
it's
colloquially
road fund license is what it is.
Exactly, because it's not a tax.
Yeah. See, the money that's spent on a new car, that's where I'd like that to go. Like, sorry, the tax being applied to new vehicles.
Yes,
that should go in the road fund. I would personally also, and I think this is generally a good thing, like to encourage more police officers, fewer speed cameras.
Yes.
Because to me, the speeding in of itself is a bit of an odd offence, because though I would not ever want to encourage reckless speeding, I also feel like the man that does, or lady, you know, they're capable of speeding as well, that does 90 mile an hour on the M1 at 10 o'clock at night when the place is deserted, if the place is deserted.
In the dry, in the summer.
In the dry, in summer, with visibility, like, there is no harm here, like, being done. Dangerous driving can be achieved at 15 mile an hour. And so I would much prefer to encourage more police presence and a little more of a kind of educational policy to road policing. So the gentleman, I presume it was a gentleman, I think it was a gentleman, that I followed last night was not speeding, but they were, by some distance, the most hazardous person on the road. You know, and so that's the sort of thing that I would like to see more attention focused on, and also more done to help encourage young people into driving, and also encourage them how to do stuff safely and properly.
Just before our German trip, whilst I've been to Germany a few times before, I hadn't ever driven in Germany. I'd always flown there and been driven around or whatever, or been in the middle of Berlin, so didn't really just use public transport. So I thought, let me just do a little bit of reading on, you know, how the speed limits work, what the overall system is. And I don't remember the German phrase, maybe you can remember it, but apparently there's this German phrase which essentially underpins the legal system around road safety, which is basically just don't be a dick. Words to that effect. It's like, it's about driving to the conditions and circumstances and vehicle capabilities and individual capabilities. So the police officers can look at you and you could be doing something well within the speed limit, but because it's in the wet and you're on, 4-inch wide tires of a, I don't know,
particular vintage
or whatever, they could deem that, and you're clearly struggling and not doing very well. They can pull you over and do you for that. Whereas if you're in a Bugatti Veyron doing 200 miles an hour and there's hardly anyone else on the road, no problem.
Yeah, I've driven past the police in Germany at 150 mile an hour and they didn't batter an eyelid because in their view, I was doing nothing wrong. I was causing no harm. I was presenting no issues. They're more likely to pull you over for having either a noisy pipe or following traffic too closely. Which, of course, at high speeds, if you're not used to it, is very, very easy to do. You don't realise just how close that car in front of you might actually be. But yeah, I would like to see something like that done here, where you go, look, we're going to relax some of the speed limits, but it's like on the Isle of Man. The fact that you're allowed to do functionally whatever speed you like does not absolve you from the responsibility of consequences if something goes wrong because you applied excessive speed. Because that's the thing to me, a fixed arbitrary speed limit, it's always baffled me that there are little narrow roads that I drive on that I think you would be insane to do 60 on, because visibility is poor, the road surface is unsuitable, the road is too narrow, yet that is what the speed limit is. And yes, I know it's a limit, not a target. But then a 4-lane, freshly paved motorway is, only 10 mile an hour more? And the 70 mile an hour limit was set as a temporary measure in the 1960s. So, and we all know that modern cars are, when the 70 mile an hour limit came in, nobody was really that bothered because 70 in a lot of the cars of the day was a reasonable achievement. They wouldn't really cruise at much more than that anyway. That was 70 mile an hour is something in the 50s or 60s. It's not really particularly pleasant. Now, of course, it's pretty mundane.
Here's an idea. Could they have a speed limit per lane, maybe? Things like that?
No, that's a stupid idea.
You think it's a stupid idea?
That is a stupid idea.
Okay.
Because that basically creates a hazard. First off, it doesn't help that people already think of the outside lane as quote unquote the fast lane anyway, when it's not. They've all basically got the same speed limit unless for some reason they don't. Also on day one, smart motorways are being abolished.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Bring back the hard shoulder.
There is nothing stupider than a smart motorway.
They've got all sorts of safety issues. There was that poor lady who lost her husband on a smart motorway who has been campaigning for this for quite some time. I don't remember their name, but I do remember that their husband was killed because the smart motorway didn't change, and he was on would have been the hard shoulder and got hit by another car.
I've broken down on the inside lane of a smart motorway. It was not fun. Right? People do not pay attention to those signs, and it's one of these things that you can see the logic of it, but you can also very quickly see the flaw in it. In case people are not sure what we're talking about, typically in Britain, a motorway has a hard shoulder, so it is a separate lane reserved for emergency use only. If you've broken down, you can pull onto it, and emergency services can use it to get to an accident. A while back, some genius somewhere decided that instead of upgrading our motorways by making them wider and adding extra lanes and so on and so forth, they would turn them into what's known as a smart motorway. So the idea is you have a system of lights, and that tells you that in heavy traffic conditions and so on and so forth, you can actually use the hard shoulder as a functional lane. The idea then is if somebody's actually had to break down in it or stop or whatever, that you get a big red X and that tells you not to use that lane anymore. Unfortunately, there was one tiny flaw in the way they executed it, which is that humans were involved.
Yep.
And so it doesn't work very well. And I recall reading a report. Now, the exact numbers I forget, but it was a police report, and in it they said that across a set period of time, the number of near-miss incidents where something didn't happen, but it got close enough that it was worthy of noting it down, cars that were in the lane they shouldn't be, nearly hit someone, this, that, and the other. Across a period of time, it was something like 1 or 2 dozen. When the road got upgraded to a smart motorway, it was then several thousand.
Wow.
The smart motorways increased the risk of accident by an enormous factor. And as far as I am concerned, the purpose of any and all road safety legislation has to be ensuring that people don't kill themselves on the road. Everything that you do, the one priority, like bugger the environment, like, right, bugger people having fun. The priority of transportation is to get people from A to B safely.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? Oh, and I think if it's not too much trouble, if we could have working trains, that would be great. I saw a great article the other day. We've renationalised one of our lines, and the very first service was partly operated by a rail replacement bus.
Oh.
Only in Britain.
That's one of the reasons I stopped using public transport and really pushed myself to get my licence, was because of rail replacement buses.
Oh, they're the worst thing in the
Have you
world.
not seen the not Mitchell and Webb, Armstrong and Miller sketch, where there's a guy at a railway station and he's sat on the bridge over the railway ready to jump off, and the guardsman comes out and he goes, mate, don't do it, and he's like, why? He's like, no, don't do it. He's like, no, I'm gonna do it. He goes, no, mate, like, train's cancelled, mate, there's nothing coming through here.
Oh dear.
And he's like, but there is a rail replacement bus service, so they get him to lie down in front of the bus outside so they can run him over. It's just,
So dark. So funny.
oh yeah.
But actually, yeah, this was a point I had in my mind earlier. Then we changed subject,
Yeah.
which was the problem we have, I think, and this is one of the things I would do as transport ministers. I'd say we're going to operate by a different principle.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to make it as hard and as expensive as possible to do the thing we don't want people to do, we'll focus our energy, the same energy, on making it as cheap and easy as possible for people to do the things we do want them to do.
Yes.
Which is use public transport. I would rather take all the money that is being spent and wasted on all of these different like toll road systems and cameras tracking where you're going and sending you fines if you don't pay them and all this. I'd rather take all of that money, the billions that they spend on that, and make public transport free.
You know what? If we had a reliable public transport route for me to get from my home to the studio where this is recorded now, I would actually use it. I genuinely would actually use it. I'd go, do you know what? I don't fancy driving today. I'm tired. I had a long night last night. I got some bits to do. I'll just hop on the bus, you know. I'll do that. I'll quite happily sit back and watch the beautiful scenery go by of the countryside. Can I? No.
And before anyone starts saying, oh, but you've got to find the money from somewhere, you do know that we're only half serious today. So
yeah,
chill.
exactly.
But apart from that, if you do want to know, watch Richard J. Murphy. He's a taxation specialist. He literally wrote the book on effective taxation in the world. Check him out because he will explain to you that tax doesn't work the way you think it does. I'm not going to go into that here, but I think that free public transport at the point of use, particularly in cities, would mean that if I have the choice between, you know, let's say a one hour drive in my car and then having to find parking, or a 1 hour and 15 minute or 1 hour and a half journey on a train and a bus, but it was free.
See,
I would take the hit.
Maybe this is controversial, but I actually think the more you think about it, the more it makes sense. I would not have a problem as a car user, and I accept I am in a luxurious position where I have some cars that are well beyond necessity, right? And some of my driving is for pleasure. I have no problem with the notion that my use of my car would help pay for public transport because, like you say, make it in London, you go, if you want to drive your Ferrari in London, that's going to be like 60 quid. Because that means if I really, really, really want to do it, I'm going to do it because I got a Ferrari, so 60 quid. We recently spent a bit of time at night driving through France. Now in France, you have the tolls for the péage for a lot of the autoroute. Now, I don't love the idea of paying for motorway journeys and not at the rate they do in France. But I will also say that without exception, barring maybe about a 300-yard stretch, those roads were immaculately paved, were beautifully kept, okay? You could do the speed limit the whole time. You could get where you wanted to efficiently and pleasantly, and I know we're going to get consensus on this one, chaps, okay? We haven't discussed this. This is almost worthy of a whole episode on its own right. The greatest travesty that faces the British motorist, what I would call, and I think no word of a lie, and I'm saying this entirely seriously, a national disgrace, right? Something that makes me just ashamed to say that I'm British. The state of our motorway services.
Oh, God.
You go to a services in Europe, and very often they are beautiful buildings built in a nice way with good quality, freshly cooked food and produce. You go to France and they've all got a proper bakery in the damn place. And a deli, and you get decent coffee and stuff like that. And if you're now, our good friends, the lorry drivers, okay, right, we are on your side because... I feel so bad for them in Britain because the services for lorry drivers here are disgusting. They're overpriced, they're not clean, they're not nice to use. By contrast, in the continent, most of the parking for lorry drivers is either cheap or free. They've got good, clean showers, toilet facilities, decent, proper food. The trucker is treated with a hell of a lot more respect in Europe, and I think we need to treat them with a lot more respect here. And a good way to do that is by making the places they have to stop all the time decent. Your classic British motorway services is just a lesson in capitalism gone wrong.
Yep.
It's horrendous.
Yep.
And it's a disgrace because they are a public service. And they're just with... There are a couple that are good. There's a few farm shoppy ones out and about. If people know any good ones, please send in. But most of them are just miserable.
And they take the worst of the worst fast food and make it even worse.
And, as somebody who has maybe mentioned before, that I have issues with my stomach and things like that. Going into a motorway service station when you really need to go is just awful because they're so dirty, they smell, that you just feel like you'd almost rather...
But wouldn't it make to you, Will, a direct improvement to your personal quality of life if you knew that every time you were on a motorway, every, let's call it, half an hour, there would be a services and it would be of a relative standard. Now, I'm going to admit here, the ones in France are a variable quality, but they are of dependable frequency.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it make a tangible difference to your life and that of many others as well, I'm sure, to know that when you're on a British motorway, you are never more than 25 miles away from somewhere you can stop, rest, close your eyes if you're feeling tired, use the facilities if you need to, get a drink or something, even if it's a blooming vending machine, right? Just something.
You know what? That would get me out doing a lot more miles. With the conditions that I have, that would get me out doing a lot more miles rather than playing the game of, is it open, is it closed, what condition are they in? You know, it would make a big difference to my life, massively.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can get behind that. I again have not driven in Europe that often, maybe 6 or 7 times. And whether it was going through France or Germany or Belgium or Netherlands, the services were just generally of a very, very high standard. Especially the food, especially on the French ones, I thought was especially good.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, look, these are some of the things that I think we need to do. However, I think the bigger priorities has to be just getting the overall driving standards to a better level.
Yeah, I tell you what, one thing I would say, and this actually, also, this is, shock at horror, real, genuine consumer news here. There was a report published recently. There was a case where somebody had killed, I think, a few people, and they were an elderly driver, and it was basically found that their eyesight was not up to standard. And the Surgeon General, I think it is, pretty much said, like, we need to change how we do things, because in Britain, when you reach, I think, is it 70 or so, you then have to start renewing your driving license more regularly. I think it's every 3 years or so. And as part of this, you effectively have to say that your eyesight is up to standard. The problem is, it seems, that a lot of people's eyesight is so bad they don't see that bit, so they just skip over it. And though I make light of it, this is basically exactly what's happening. And we are effectively the only country, I think, in Europe that allows people to self-report the condition of their eyesight. And that is an absolute... We're not talking get them on a blooming assault course and get them through a full army physical. Eyesight is so basic. So
yeah, submitting an eye test would be a minor thing.
I was going to say, don't people over a certain age qualify for free eye tests anyway?
Probably do. I mean, like, partner with blooming Specsavers or somewhere and just make it. And the technology is in place where you just make it that you go, right, Doris, have you had a Specsavers visit this year? You did? Okay, all right. Give us the number of the test, or give us your name and where you had it done, right? Because she's old, so she might not have heard of the internet before, right? Although 70 is not as old as it once was. And we'll just make sure it's okay. Do we verify it? Because you're like, right, as far as I'm concerned, the minute anybody is harmed or killed, it's the same thing with like turning streetlights off at night. You're like, if you've decided that the place needs streetlights, they stay on. Like, because as far as I'm concerned, the acceptable number of lives lost to save a council money is zero. Right? That it's as simple as that. You're like, and there is always going to be a way to find some money to keep this stuff on. Always. It just requires a bit of policy that puts safety first.
Honestly, it'd be so easy to do. Like having a central, it would work exactly the same way that insurance works, right? So there is that, I can't remember the name of it, MID, the centralized database for MID, that's it. For insurance, which you can look up yourself via askmid.com, I think it is, or .co.uk. And I'll tell you how I learned that in a minute. Have a centralized database that all of the opticians can submit their records to, and authorized, you give them like you can get a code, if you like, to share your specific data with the DVLA, a bit like a check code for your license. If you don't know what it is, look it up. And then the DVLA will be able to look up your last eye test. If it was within the last, let's say, 2 years, and it was above the standard, great. If it wasn't, then you get referred to go and get an eye test. And once that's been updated, then you can get your license.
Yeah, and I have said for a very, very long time, I believe that at that same age, what you should do is not have to redo your driving test, but I believe that most people of a certain age, they got a routine, right? They're unlikely to suddenly decide for the first time in their life they're going to just drive down to Andorra, right? It's unlikely to happen. But they go and see Beryl, they go and see Keith, they pop down to Waitrose or whatever, they have their routine. So I think there should be a legal requirement that once you hit 70, that as just a basic check, you have to go to some description of, test center or whatever, and all they're going to do is just sit with you for half an hour, 45 minutes, something like that, which is more than enough time to judge the standard of somebody's driving. And you just go very, very simply, at the end of it, you just go, Beryl, take me to the shops. Like, drive where it is you drive, right? Just drive for half an hour, right? And at the end of which you go, yeah, cool, thank you very much, we've got no concerns. Or you might go, we would maybe recommend that you do take some further tuition if you want to keep driving. Or you go, yeah, those keys, can you give them here because they're going in the industrial mincer, and that will happen. There will be, we've all seen it. I mean, the chap I was following last night, that could have been somebody that was stone cold sober, and was just the world's shittest driver. Yeah. Then what do you do?
And maybe eyesight was the issue. That's why they were weaving, because they couldn't really see where they were going. You had this problem very recently where an elderly person nearly pulled out on you, didn't they?
Yeah.
We talked about this in a previous episode.
Yeah. And it's one of those, because obviously you do not want to take away somebody's freedom. Driving is a freedom, and it's for social as well for people, especially maybe if someone's a bit more rural. I know a lady who is in her 90s who is a customer of mine, and I see her quite regularly out on the road. And she's a good driver, she is absolutely fine. She's really, kind of there. She's got, razor sharp wit. She's all 100% there still at her age. And that is great. But I also know people in their 60s who should have been off the road a long time ago. So, there is finding that balance, isn't it? Of going, yes, you can continue to drive with a little bit of perhaps a few hours of tuition from an instructor to get your confidence back up, or no, really, that's it. You are beyond the ability. you know. And I think we should even say, as people who are younger as well, that I would agree in 40, 50 years' time, if I'm still knocking about, I do think that, you know, my driving should be assessed, because how capable I am now will not be the way I'm capable then.
Also, the highway code changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And very, very few people keep up to date with it. I don't know how many people know that 2 years ago, some significant changes were made to who has priority.
Stupid ass changes, can I say?
Oh, well, especially the ones that affect roundabouts, because technically, as you're exiting a roundabout, if there are pedestrians waiting to cross, technically you are supposed to stop and let them across. And I think that is the dumbest thing.
And stop in a roundabout?
Yes.
You're joking.
They also changed it so that if you are turning into a small side road, pedestrians who are about to cross get priority. And in my mind, this is dumb for a great number of reasons. In brief, as a car driver, you're always going to slow down and check that it is clear to enter the road, because there are a whole bunch of different hazards that may or may not be there. Right? As a pedestrian, you should always check that the road is safe to clear and cross, because the policy that I operate is that larger traffic does have a responsibility to smaller traffic. However, the smaller traffic is ultimately going to lose in a fight. So you as the pedestrian, you are basically the lowest rung in this food chain. So you really have the greatest responsibility to yourself to not get run over, because it does not matter if you are right, if you are being scraped out of the spokes of an 18-wheeler. And the problem is, of course, if you're looking to turn from a side road, you're probably going to be slowing down anyway, but then your pedestrians looking to cross, they're going to be checking that you aren't going to be going, because now you've got some people that know what the highway code is, some people that don't know what the highway code is, some people that do know but know that the other person doesn't know and are going to be belligerent about it anyway. So you're like, I just think it was all a lot clearer when the case was, hey, pedestrian, are you not at a designated pedestrian crossing point? Wait for the cars to have gone. Like, that just made so much more sense to me.
And even your surprise, again, it wasn't very well publicized. I found out about it because I follow a driving instructor on YouTube called Ashley Neal. And
I've seen a few of his videos. He's good.
I watch a lot of his stuff, and he was sort of going back and forth debating it a while back and sort of demonstrating all of these problems that you've just described. And I've learned a lot from him. I have learned a lot. I'm still not the best driver, but I've learned a lot. And he's made me think a lot more about how do I fix other people's mistakes in the same way that I would like others to help me fix my mistakes, because I do make them. So I think that was one of the best things I took away from him. But yeah, I follow him. When I started hearing about it, I asked other people, and a lot of people hadn't heard about it. So yeah.
I also think we should, and this is, again, very, very common other places, and some of our listeners, particularly those from Europe, if we have any, might be shocked to hear this, make doing the first aid course a mandatory part of doing it. I actually want to get, for me, I did do a first aid thing a long time ago. I remember I did it at film school, because technically speaking, we should have a first aid on all of our film sets, right? And one of my mates, Oggy, who's Danish, he laughed because he said, hang on a minute, we're doing like a 1-day course and we're going to be the designated first aider. He's like, I had to do a 2-day first aid course in Denmark just to get my driving license. And the logic is perfect. If you hit somebody, you are the first to the scene.
Yep.
So that tiny bit of knowledge between you hitting them and the ambulance arriving could be absolutely critical, particularly if you're somewhere where maybe signal's a bit patchy, somebody can't get to you as quickly as would be ideal. Like, there's lots and lots of stuff that you can do. I would like to see first aid kits mandatory in cars. Some do it just optionally. I think it's a really good thing. I mean, it's one thing as you guys know, early in this year, there was an accident while I was filming, and the car that was involved was a BMW. And so I know it sounds really, really daft. One of my first thoughts was, okay, it's a BMW. I know where the first aid kit is.
Yeah.
So I know, if we need it or we don't, as it turned out, there wasn't really anything we could do with it, but I know where there's a first aid kit, right? And it's even been, I know it sounds really daft. I've had a couple of times where either my partner or my family or whatever have cut themselves, in the kitchen. And I've wound up going, shit, where have I got first aid? It's in the car.
Yeah.
I had a first aid kit in the car. Like, brilliant. Everybody should have one of those. You know, same with the fire safety stick. Obviously, we'll take out some shares in them as well.
Yeah.
Because, you know, everybody should have some sort of fire extinguisher in a car. You might not need it for your car.
Yeah.
But it's just really good to have. You know, because if you've got a car, it probably means you've got a house. And, you know, if you've got something to help put the fire out there, it's a good idea.
Right. I think we should be looking to wrap up. I am going to say one last thing, and it goes back to a point you made earlier, which was about licensing and insurance. You know, Tour de France,
Yeah.
right? What do all the cyclists have on their back?
A chip?
A number.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They wear a number on the back and a number on the front. Yeah. You have to wear a high-vis vest that's got your personal number on it, your personal registration number or whatever it is. It's got to be very secure and everything, so people can't just look up who you are, in the same way that they can't just look up your number plate and find out who you are unless there's a really good reason, all the rules around that, etc., etc. But yeah, if you're riding a bicycle or on one of these e-scooter things or anything like that, you've got to have your number on the back and you've got to be insured, and get the red light cameras to detect when they go across the red light as well.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because that whole red light jumping thing just winds me up. It's like some of the most self-righteous cyclists in the world. And I cycle, right? I do cycle. I cycle on the road. I cycle in a sort of beautiful nature reserve as well. It's lovely. But I don't jump red lights. I ride sensibly. But when you see people jumping the red lights and then getting annoyed with you...
To be honest, in London, I'm now shocked when a cyclist
doesn't
stops
jump
for a red light. And do you know what? They're not going in the industrial mincer.
No.
They are being made to cycle across the motorway that's on the way to the industrial mincer and without traffic slowing.
Yeah. And if they make it as far as the mincer, then we'll let them go.
Yeah. But it's a warning, right? So what do you want is a QR code, basically?
Yeah, something like a QR code on
back.
everyone's back. There you go.
And if they disobey the law, we shave the head and QR code tattooed on. But that does take us down a slightly dark path.
Yeah.
You know,
On a much more amusing note, to think maybe to end things on today, I want to tell a story of something that happened to me in a traffic jam recently with a guy on a moped, actually, which made me die laughing.
Okay.
So I was driving through Colchester, and I was trying to get to the other side towards I can't remember. I think it's West Burgh or something like that. Where it is. There's a very...
Most people won't even know where Colchester is.
Okay,
so carry on.
Yeah, but well, for people who do know, there is a road which gets quite kind of narrows down, and you can just about get two cars by there, and sometimes there are cars parked on the street as well. What happened was there was a set of traffic lights there because there was some works going on, but the timing was done in such a way is as when one side went, by the time, because there was another set of traffic lights only a few hundred meters down the road, that my lane couldn't move. I sat there for 10 minutes trying to get through the set of traffic lights because when my time was green, cars were still coming and cars were stuck in there.
Yep.
But the bit which made me laugh was there was a moped rider that came up beside me. What he did was he got off his bike, he turned off his bike and took the key out and wheeled it down the pavement all the way down to the other side of the traffic jam, then got on and just started it and drove off again. And I thought, you know what? As far as filtering goes, that is the best way.
He has not broken a single law.
Exactly.
You know, in JayEmm Radiator Arms Britain, medal for quick thinking.
Absolutely.
And innovation.
Absolutely. That made my frustration a lot better.
Here's another one. Okay. Temporary traffic lights. After a certain period of time, some spikes pop up. There you go.
Do you know what I saw? I'll leave you with this one. I was driving into central London. I lived in West London at the time, and I was going into the sort of, it might be the A40 flyover that you get as you then head sort of in towards sort of Regency Park kind of way, sort of going in. At the time, I think it was a 40 mile an hour limit. It's probably like 10 mile an hour now. And we're driving in, and this chap cruised past on a sort of, I think it was like a Suzuki, you know, cruiser, like a Harley Davidson, but not a Harley, you know, for non-bikers. And he was going along, and I thought, oh, he's doing at least a good 50, 60. He's definitely speeding. And the speed camera was coming up, and I could see it. And I thought, oh, he better be careful. He's gonna get done in a minute. He rode past that speed camera, and casual as you like, leant back and put his hand over his number plate.
Oh, wow. I have seen that as well.
Excellent.
I thought, you know what? I ain't even mad, bro. Like that's absolute genius. I loved it.
Dear.
Yeah, go for it. I have actually talk about what you said. I've always said, like, if I had to go to the hospital to sort of, get a nasty cough looked at, and the doctor told me that, actually, sorry, Mr. Martin, you're not got that long. I plan to take Grandad's old Astrovan and sellotape a whole bunch of bicycles to the edge of it and basically drive through every single red light in London, mount every pavement as I please, and basically drive with all the due care and consideration that the cyclists I see do. And I'm going, oh, I'm sorry, I just thought if I sort of just sellotape them to the van, it'll be like some sort of protective force field, because these guys don't give a shit.
Nope.
Some opinions and some may not be shared with necessarily other members of the Radiator Arms podcast. All kind of fury and rage should be directed at James, not me. Thank you very much. I'm not being lumped in with that one.
His fault. Blame it. Oh, I like cyclists too. I was a very keen cyclist, and yeah, I just like to see a bit of responsibility shared in the same way that we like cars and everything. Like, I want to be able to enjoy my passion responsibly, and also, understand the difference between red and green. It's not too much to ask, is it?
Oh, God.
All views are that of the individual and not necessarily representative of the brand. Your home is at risk if you do not keep up with repayments on your mortgage.
Please don't sue us.
On that note,
thank you everybody for listening. We will be back next week at 7 a.m. with a I'm sure less contentious topic.
I hope so.
Yeah, and please, as ever, if you've got an opinion on this matter, send it to our email address, which is landlord@theradiatorarms.com. We'll see you at 7 o'clock Monday morning, either here on YouTube or on Apple, Amazon, and Spotify, for those of you that can't bear to look at our gorgeous faces. Anyway, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.